The engine roared as Darius Thomas stepped on the gas, the tires screeching against the road. The weight of the day still hung over him, but he had no choice but to keep driving. 3 hours earlier, his world had come crashing down. His tech company, built from the ground up over 7 years, was now bankrupt. The final eviction notice had arrived at his office that morning, the letters of unpaid bills piling up in front of him like a grim reminder of all he had lost. Darius had spent years working tirelessly to build something meaningful, but in the end, it wasn't enough. Investors had backed out at the last minute, and it was hard not to see the pattern, especially when the investors had realized that the man behind TechVision was black. His race, it seemed, was as much a hindrance to his success as his drive had been a testament to it. He was driving now, trying to escape the suffocating feeling that came with failure. But fate had other plans. 30 seconds after Darius pressed the accelerator, the car slowed, and the road ahead grew darker. 3 men in dark suits appeared out of nowhere, surrounding his car with stern, unfriendly expressions. Darius stiffened, keeping his hands visible on the steering wheel. The tallest of the men leaned toward his window. "Are you sure you didn't see a blonde woman pass by here? Maybe she asked for directions." His gaze pierced through the interior of the worn-out car, lingering just a moment longer than comfortable. Darius shook his head calmly. "Like I said before, sir, I'm just here to change a flat tire. Haven't seen anyone." The man stared at him, his cold eyes scanning Darius from head to toe, his worn suit, the car with 2 years of unpaid payments still hanging over him. Finally, the man stepped back, and the others followed. They were gone in seconds. Darius exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Are they gone?" a voice asked from the trunk of the car, followed by the sound of the trunk opening. A woman with messy blonde hair climbed out, her expensive running clothes covered in mud. She looked at Darius with wide, relieved eyes. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't hidden me." Darius blinked in surprise. What had just happened? 1 minute, he was a man with nothing but the weight of his failures, and the next, he was hiding a woman in his car from armed strangers. He had no idea how this would change the course of his life. "My name is Alexandra Winters," the woman said, stepping carefully into the back seat, still visibly shaken. "But you can call me Alex." "Darius Thomas," he replied automatically, his mind racing. He glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. "Why were they chasing you?" Alex laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "Because I ran away from home," she said, pulling something from her jacket pocket. "A small flash drive. This is why. My father is Richard Winters, CEO of Winter Enterprise. Do you know him?" Darius froze. Winter Enterprise. The name sent a shiver down his spine. The billion-dollar conglomerate had made its mark on the business world by destroying competitors, like Darius' company, through ruthless acquisitions. They had taken down TechVision and crushed every hope he had of seeing his dreams succeed. "I know him well," Darius said, his voice suddenly colder. "They basically destroyed my business." Alex wasn't surprised. "So you're just another victim of my father's methods." She waved the flash drive in front of him. "I have proof. This flash drive contains everything you need to expose him. Fraud, tax evasion, bribing regulatory agencies. You name it." Darius felt the pit in his stomach grow deeper as his phone buzzed with a notification. He looked at the screen and cursed under his breath. "Your father just marked us as car thieves," he said, showing her the alert. "We need to get off the road now." "Don't worry," Alex said, a hint of a smile playing at her lips, despite the situation. "He'll find me, but not if we're prepared." Darius's mind raced as he fired up the engine, the car rumbling to life on the first try. They needed to get away, and fast. But Darius couldn't shake the questions swirling in his mind. How had Alex ended up in his car? How could someone like her, someone born into such privilege, betray her own family? And why was Richard Winters so desperate to get this flash drive back? What none of them knew was that this seemingly chance encounter between a bankrupt businessman and a runaway heiress would soon unravel a web of corruption reaching the highest echelons of power. And it would change everything. As Darius sped down the winding back road, the weight of the moment settled heavily in the air between him and Alex. His mind was still reeling from the earlier events, the sudden appearance of the security team, the woman now sitting behind him. None of it made sense. Yet, there was something in Alex's eyes, a quiet defiance, that pulled him in. He couldn't help but wonder. How could someone like her, who had everything, run away from a life of privilege and protection? What had driven her to take such drastic action? But he kept his focus on the road. They had to get away. They had to stay ahead of her father's people. "Turn left up ahead," Alex instructed, her voice cutting through the tension. She looked nervously over her shoulder, scanning for any sign of pursuit. Darius followed her directions, turning the car onto a barely visible dirt road that snaked between dense trees. The road was rough, the night making it even more difficult to navigate, but Darius's instincts told him this was their best chance. For 15 minutes, they bumped along the path, the sounds of the car's tires crunching against the gravel filling the silence. Alex sat tense in the back seat, her eyes darting between the rear-view mirror and the darkened road ahead. Finally, they arrived at a small, weathered cabin, hidden among the thick foliage. Alex seemed to exhale, a little of the tension leaving her body. "This is it," she said softly. "My father forgot this place even existed." Darius's gaze shifted from the cabin to Alex, taking in her disheveled appearance. "A family property?" Alex nodded. "Bought decades ago for a real estate project that never went anywhere. It's been abandoned for years. My father wouldn't even remember it was here." Darius parked the car and killed the engine, the faint sound of crickets filling the quiet. They both stepped out, and Alex led the way toward the door. The cabin was old, and its wooden exterior had long since begun to weather, but it stood sturdy, hidden from the prying eyes of the world. Inside, dust particles floated in the dim light as Darius followed Alex to a small table where she motioned for him to sit. She took a seat across from him, her eyes glued to the flash drive she had taken from her jacket earlier. "I need to see what's on it," Darius said, his voice low. "If we're going to do this, I need to know what I'm up against." Alex hesitated for just a moment, then plugged the flash drive into his laptop. The screen flickered to life, revealing a series of folders and files that seemed to hold the kind of power that could bring down an empire. Darius scrolled through the documents, his heart pounding in his chest. The first files were filled with corporate jargon, fraudulent contracts, tax evasion schemes, and detailed records of bribes paid to government officials and regulatory agencies. Darius's eyes widened. But it was one specific file that made his breath catch in his throat. "Wait," Darius said, his voice strained as he clicked on the file. The document opened, and he stared at the memo. His hands shook as he pointed to the screen. "This one. It's a plan to sabotage my company." Alex leaned forward, looking over his shoulder. Her breath hitched as she saw the details. The memo was clear. Winter Enterprise had not only acquired Darius's competitor, TechVision, but had deliberately orchestrated a cyber attack on its servers, leaked customer data, and planted false information to scare off investors. Darius sat back, his mind reeling. "Your father didn't just destroy my business. He made sure I'd never recover." Alex swallowed hard. "I know. I always knew what he was capable of, but seeing it laid out like this, it's different." She looked at him, her voice quiet. "This is why I left. Because I couldn't be a part of it anymore. Not after everything he did." Darius closed the laptop slowly, the weight of the situation settling deeper in his chest. We need professional help. This goes beyond us. Alex nodded, her eyes dark with determination. I know someone. She's a lawyer. Maya Rivera. She's the only person who ever tried to help me when my father started taking over smaller businesses. Are you sure she's trustworthy? Darius asked, still feeling the sting of betrayal from his previous experiences. She's the real deal, Alex replied, her voice firm. And she's not afraid of my father. Darius nodded. He had no other choice. If they were going to take down Richard Winters, they needed a plan. And they needed someone who knew how to navigate the kind of power that Winters wielded. As they sat in the dimly lit cabin, the moonlight filtering through the cracks in the walls, Darius realized this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. About exposing the lies and corruption that had taken so much from him, from people like him. And now, with Alex by his side, he felt a small spark of hope flicker in the darkness. Tomorrow, they would take the first step. The next morning, the world felt strangely different. The weight of the night's revelations was still fresh on Darius's mind, but a new sense of purpose had replaced the quiet despair that had followed him through the last few months. They had a plan, and that plan meant that Richard Winters, the man who had tried to crush him and countless others, would no longer get away with it. But to take on someone like Winters, they needed the right people, and that's why they were headed to meet Maya Rivera. Alex sat in the passenger seat, her fingers nervously tapping on the armrest. She'd spent her entire life in the shadow of her father's empire, but now, every choice she made seemed to carry more weight than the last. Helping Darius wasn't just a way to strike back, it was her chance to finally do something meaningful, to stand for what was right, rather than what was convenient. Darius glanced at her. You all right? Alex met his eyes briefly before looking away. I'm just nervous. Maya's been an ally, but this is different. We're about to challenge my father. Everything changes after today. Darius nodded. He understood. Everything was different now. His life, his purpose, it had all shifted in ways he hadn't fully grasped yet. But with the flash drive in hand, with the evidence they needed, he knew they were taking the first step toward something much bigger than either of them had anticipated. They arrived at a small, unassuming office building in the heart of the city. The sign outside read Maya Rivera Specialized Law, the kind of modest sign you'd barely notice unless you were looking for it. Darius parked, and the two of them stepped out, the morning sun shining down on the street, but there was a sense of urgency in their every step. Inside, the atmosphere was calm but tense. Maya was waiting for them in her minimalist office, a woman who radiated competence. She was in her early 40s, her prematurely gray hair pulled back into a neat bun, and colorful eyeglass frames perched on her nose. The moment she saw them, her face softened into a small smile, but it was clear she knew the gravity of what they were about to face. So we finally have the evidence, Maya said, gesturing to the files Alex handed her. She examined the flash drive quickly, popping it into her laptop, her fingers moving swiftly over the keys as she scrolled through the documents. Darius watched as Maya's eyes flicked from the screen to the papers, her expression growing more serious with each passing moment. When she finally closed the laptop, she looked up at them, her face tight. This is dangerous, you know. Richard Winters isn't just a businessman. He's a man who controls everything. Judges, politicians, law enforcement. He has people everywhere. Alex's expression darkened, but she didn't back down. Which is exactly why we need someone who knows how to navigate the system. Someone like you. Maya's lips twisted into a wry smile. You're not wrong. But even with this evidence, we'll need to be careful. We'll need a plan. A very, very careful plan. Darius leaned forward, his tone serious. We're ready to do whatever it takes. Winters is powerful, But he's also arrogant. That's his weakness. We need to make him slip, to get him to expose himself. If we do this right, we can take him down. Maya looked at him, her gaze sharp. I'll help you. But you'll need more than just the law on your side. You'll need people who can get inside his operations, who know how to handle digital security, who know how to make this evidence public without putting ourselves in danger. Darius turned to Alex. You mentioned a friend, someone who can help with the digital side? Alex nodded, her eyes narrowing with resolve. Zoe Chun. She's a digital security expert. She used to work for the government, and she knows the ins and outs of corporate espionage. If we need inside access to Winter's systems, she's the one to get it. Perfect, Maya said, her voice steady. Get Zoe on board. I'll start preparing the legal side. We'll need a secure infrastructure to store this evidence and, when the time comes, a way to release it to the public without it being traced back to us. It was a start. Darius felt a surge of determination rise within him. This wasn't just about his company anymore. It was about the thousands of entrepreneurs like him, people who had been crushed by the system, who had been denied opportunities simply because of who they were. We'll do it, Darius said, his voice firm. We'll take him down. The plan was set into motion almost immediately. As Darius, Alex, and Maya began making their preparations, Richard Winters was oblivious. He had no idea that his daughter had gone rogue, that the woman he considered a spoiled, rebellious child had turned against him. Back in his glass skyscraper penthouse, Winters was fuming. What do you mean you lost her? He barked at his head of security, his voice rising with each word. She's a 26-year-old girl. How hard can it be to find her? The security guard, visibly intimidated, stammered. We're tracking every camera in the city, but she seems to have disappeared. We believe someone is helping her. Richard's face twisted in contempt. Who would be stupid enough to help her? He was already dismissing the idea of her running away, still underestimating how serious Alex's rebellion truly was. The answer was simple. Darius Thomas. What Winters couldn't know was that while he spent his time dismissing his daughter's actions as a mere phase, an unlikely alliance was forming, one that would bring his entire empire crumbling down. It had been 2 weeks since Darius, Alex, and Maya had come together, and every day had felt like a calculated risk. Each move was more daring than the last, each decision more important. The team was assembling, slowly but surely. Zoe Chun had joined them, bringing with her the kind of digital expertise that Darius knew would be crucial in their war against Richard Winters. With her help, they had begun to infiltrate Winter Enterprises' digital infrastructure, gathering more incriminating evidence with every passing hour. But the clock was ticking. Soon, they would have to act. It was an early morning when Darius received a text from Maya. It's time. Richard Winters is speaking at a press conference today. This is our chance. Darius's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Alex, who was already pacing in their small office, her eyes focused on the monitors where they had been tracking Winters' movements. Her resolve had only grown stronger since their first meeting, since she had made the decision to defy her father. Are you sure? Darius asked, his voice low, his mind racing through every possible outcome. Alex stopped pacing and met his gaze, her eyes hard but full of purpose. This is it. We've gathered enough evidence. Maya's ready. Zoe's ready. And we're ready. If we do this right, we can expose him. The world will see who Richard Winters really is. Darius nodded. Then let's finish this. The Winters Enterprise Auditorium was packed with reporters, analysts, and the who's who of the business world. Richard Winters, as always, looked like a man who belonged at the top of the pyramid. His tailored suit and confident smile were the very image of corporate power. Today, he was announcing the largest acquisition in the company's history, Another victory for the empire he had built. The press conference was underway, and Richard stood before a room full of people, discussing the merger with Garner Technologies, a rival corporation. He smiled as he spoke about innovation and corporate responsibility, trying to present himself as a man of integrity in a world that adored his power. But what Richard didn't know was that while he was speaking about business ethics and responsibility, something much bigger was unfolding behind the scenes. Darius sat in the back row of the auditorium, blending into the crowd, his simple suit a stark contrast to the lavish surroundings. He glanced at Maya, who was seated beside him. She gave him a small nod. The plan was in motion. Suddenly, every cell phone in the auditorium vibrated at the same time, a synchronized buzz that rippled through the crowd. Richard's confident smile faltered for a moment, and the room fell into confusion as everyone reached for their phones. On the screens surrounding the auditorium, a single anonymous link appeared with the simple message, "The Real Winters Enterprise." The audience buzzed with confusion as reporters began to murmur. Richard's face paled slightly. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice faltering. Before he could continue, another message popped up on the screen, followed by another. The documents started flashing on the screens, emails, spreadsheets, memos, each one more damning than the last. "Richard Winters," one of the reporters called out, "could you comment on the documents showing that your company deliberately sabotaged smaller competitors, including TechVision?" Richard's jaw clenched, but he tried to dismiss the accusation. "These are forgeries," he snapped, but his voice lacked the conviction he once had. He reached for the remote to turn off the monitors, but it was too late. Another reporter stood up. "What about the records of payments to judges?" Another document flashed onto the screen. "Or the emails detailing systematic tax evasion?" The room was now in chaos. Richard's confident facade was crumbling as more and more files appeared on the screens, each one more incriminating than the last. The truth was being broadcast in real time, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Darius's heart raced as he watched Richard's face drain of color. But the moment that sealed the deal came when Alex's voice echoed through the speakers. "My name is Alexandra Winters," the recorded message began. "I am presenting this evidence because I believe that no company should be above the law. These are internal documents that prove years of predatory practices, systematic discrimination against Black and Latino entrepreneurs, tax evasion, and judicial corruption." The room was silent for a moment as everyone processed the information. Then, the federal agents began to file into the auditorium, their badges clearly visible. Richard's security team scrambled in confusion, but they were no match for the legal firepower that had just arrived. "This is a conspiracy," Richard shouted, his face twisted with rage. "My own daughter manipulated by jealous competitors." "No one manipulated your daughter," Darius said, standing up at last. His voice was calm, but it cut through the room like a blade. "She made her own moral decision. Something you clearly never did." Richard's eyes widened in recognition. You're that failure, Darius Thomas." "I'm not here for my company," Darius replied, his voice steady, his eyes never leaving Richard's. "I'm here for justice. For all the entrepreneurs you systematically destroyed because they didn't fit your profile." The room was in an uproar. People whispered among themselves, their phones now recording the chaos unfolding in front of them. Richard's empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Maya stood up, her badge flashing as she stepped forward. "Not anymore," she said, her voice cold. "All your friends are already under investigation." The lead agent approached Richard Winters, holding out an arrest warrant. "Richard Winters, you are under arrest on charges of tax fraud, active corruption, and antitrust violations." As the agents led Winters away, Darius felt the weight of years of oppression and loss finally begin to lift. He had done it. They had done it. The empire that had crushed him and countless others was falling, and there was nothing Richard Winters could do about it. Outside, Darius, Alex, Maya, and Zoe stood together, watching as the media frenzy unfolded around them. The world had just learned the truth about Winters' enterprise. The mighty had fallen, and with it, the corrupt system that had allowed them to thrive. Alex looked at Darius, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You did it." Darius smiled back, but it was a smile that spoke of more than just revenge. "We did it. And now, we get to rebuild." The battle had been won, but the real work was just beginning. The system would be different now. People like Darius, like Alex, would have a seat at the table, not just as survivors, but as creators, as leaders, as voices that could no longer be silenced. This wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning. And for the first time in a long while, Darius felt a real sense of hope. Because justice wasn't just about taking down the powerful, it was about rebuilding something better. And he was ready to start that work, one step at a time.